All right, let's jump over to the Mouse House now, you guys. And we're going to talk about this one, too, because this came out of nowhere. Everybody was blindsided, including her. Victoria Alonso, Marvel's president of physical production, post-production, visual effects, and animation, basically second in charge of Marvel behind Kevin Feige, was fired earlier this month. Now, while the cause of Alonso's termination is unclear, sources say the decision was made by a consortium, including Human Resources, Disney's legal department, and multiple executives, including co-chairman, Disney Entertainment co-chairman Alan Bergman, to whom all of Marvel Studios reports, because he's the head of all the studios. Now, Alonso's longtime boss and Marvel chief creative officer, Kevin Feige, felt mired and in an impossible situation and ultimately did not intervene and had no part in her termination. Now, Alonso, if you guys aren't familiar, has been with the company since the earliest days of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, establishing an enviable 17-year run and watching the studio grow from operating above a Mercedes-Benz dealership in Beverly Hills to being acquired by Disney. Now, during her tenure, the MCU became obviously the highest grossing franchise in film history. Alonso joined the studio in 2006 as chief of visual effects and post-production and helped launch the MCU as a co-producer on 2008's Iron Man. She also served as a co-producer on Iron Man 2, Thor, and Captain America: The First Avenger. Alonso was upped to executive producer on The Avengers, makes sense, the landmark film, of course, that grossed $1.5 billion and took Marvel to new heights, proving that the concept of a shared cinematic universe could really work. Now, Alonso has served as executive producer on Marvel's subsequent releases and also worked on its Disney Plus TV series. Now, in 2021, she was promoted again to president, physical and post-production, visual effects, and animated production. Now, despite her sudden exit, Alonso is going to be credited still as a producer on the upcoming Marvel films Guardian of the Galaxies Volume 3 and The Marvels, plus all the Disney shows that are still coming, Secret Invasion, Ironheart, Echo, and Agatha Coven of Chaos. Now, Alonso's dismissal has raised numerous questions about the behind-the-scenes workings at the prized content engine, and with them, another unfavorable news cycle for Disney CEO Bob Iger as he attempts to stabilize the parent company amid economic unrest. Now, I have a theory here. All right. Feige's untouchable, okay? Everybody knows it. You can't touch Feige. He is Marvel, right? They needed a scapegoat. Everybody is under the general consensus that Phase 4 was underwhelming and just really not that good. And Phase 5, I disagree because I loved Ant-Man, but a lot of people think that Phase 5 has kind of started sputtering, right? It didn't get off to a good start. They needed a scapegoat. They needed somebody to blame for the poor performance, somebody to blame for all the shitty special effects, somebody, and they know it can't be Feige. They can't throw Feige. So they needed somebody to throw under the bus, and I think she is that victim. I think according to inside sources, she was completely blindsided, had no idea it was coming. There was no talk of it. There was no chatter. There was not just, hey, you're fired. I think Disney and all the executives got together and said, look, people are unhappy. We kind of stumbled. We had a little misstep here or there. Somebody has to fucking pay for it. Unfortunately, Victoria is the victim.
It's so crazy because, like, one, I feel like how does Kevin Feige just step to the side and let this happen after a colleague of 17 years who you grown with and built a relationship with from basically the ground up? How does he just step aside and let that happen? I get it. You're like the top producer right now. You're number one on everybody's call list. But I'm a little disappointed in that situation. Like, don't get me wrong, completely admire the guy. He's doing some amazing things with the help of his team, like her. So, I mean, a little disappointed in that situation where he just kind of stepped to the side and just like, hands off. But again, I feel like this is not to look at Phase 4, which made a shit ton of money. Don't get me wrong. It was definitely the most underwhelming phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And they topped it off with Black Panther, though, that I thought was absolutely amazing. I liked Ant-Man as well, so I really had no bones to pick with that. But I felt like, it's just you got it to a point to where you're not making these movies, and you and I were talking about this yesterday. It got to a point where you're not making these movies or television shows special anymore. The 1 or 2 times a year where you put out these projects, that's when they were special. That's what built up the anticipation. And that's what brought in the rewatch value as well, because you saw it in the theaters and then you were able to buy it on DVD and just keep it and to continue rewatching it. So I thought that was very important that I don't necessarily think we have anymore. And then I also feel like, there's entirely too many, they're introducing too many new characters at one time in Phase 4 where you're like, okay, where is this going? Like, for example, Moon Knight. No one really understands where and how he's going to fit in to the, the franchise timeline, as I like to call it, the ones that, are very established and continue moving forward. So no one really gets where that one's going to fit in unless you're like comic book people who have ideas.
I totally have an idea.
Well, yeah, but in this, for layman people, and it makes it very hard to be a casual fan now. You have to be a diehard fan where you have to watch all of these shows to get where everything connects, which I also think is a setback because not everybody has time for this shit. Like we reported a couple weeks ago with my statistic, there is an infinite amount of new content that's out there just on streamers alone. We're not even talking movies. So to have someone sit down and say, okay, you have to be dedicated to this stuff to where you can watch the franchise movies that come out on the big screen, I feel like is not necessarily fair to everything else that is out there right now, which is really good. There's a lot of really good content out there right now, but I think it's very oversaturated with content, and I feel like it falls victim of, so I just feel like it's a whole mess of things that are happening all at once that you look to place the blame on one person, and I don't necessarily think that's the right thing to do. I feel like it's just the industry that we're living in right now. I mean, it's oversaturated. There's way too many things. It's not special. So it's just, to put all of that on Victoria, I feel like is unfair.
Well, I can put it on one person, and it's not Victoria. I'm going to just flat out say who I think is responsible for it, and that's Bob Chapek. And I know people are going to be like, oh, but she was fired underneath Iger. And like, that's true. Iger's is back, and she was fired under Iger's watch, but I think she's a victim of Bob Chapek, and I'll tell you why. Because the reason it was so oversaturated through Phase 4 is because Chapek ordered content, non-stop content for Disney Plus. He fed the beast. He said, we need more content, we need more content, we need more content. And then he hardlined deadlines. You remember all the shit coming left and right about the visual effects, right? She-Hulk looked like shit, or this didn't look good, or that didn't look good. Well, apparently, there was a lot of hard deadlines, and poor Victoria had to become like this uber bitch on top of her teams to try to meet these deadlines in fear of not getting there and Chapek being pissed. And so she became hard, and she came down hard, and that didn't go over well with a lot of the visual effects and post-production people, which kind of started to give her a bad rep, but I think it was all, hey, we've got Disney Plus, we're competing, we're seeing subscribers grow, we've got to take down Netflix, content. Knowing that Marvel was the beast, that everybody wanted Marvel, Chapek overstepped. And that's something that Iger would have never done. Oh, the entire run of Iger and Feige was, hey, let's put one out, maybe 2 every year. Nothing crazy, let's build it up. Let's get them wanting it. Let's make them wait a little bit, right? And I even think that when they kicked off Disney Plus, had Iger still been in charge for the long haul of Disney Plus, it would have been spread out. It would have been, okay, hey, Loki's a great start, or, that's awesome, or Falcon, and let's wait now. Let's do this one. Let's do this one. And then it would be okay to tie into the movies, because you'd only have 2 movies coming out that year and only 1 series or maybe 2 series, but they would be spread so far apart that you would be anticipating and you would be able to watch them in time to watch what you're supposed to watch. Not all these delays and all these things. That wholeheartedly, I believe, falls on Chapek and the mismanagement of the company and the mismanagement of understanding the streaming business. And unfortunately for Victoria, like I said, I think she's the victim of. They needed a scapegoat. And I'm sure Iger's not happy about it. Iger's a good man, and I'm sure he is not happy about someone having to take the blame. But there are shareholders, and you have to answer to the shareholders, and they want somebody to blame. And so this is the business of it, and sometimes it's not a nice business. I agree with you, though. I think that Feige should have fought for her, and I'll tell you why. Because remember, Iger fought for you. When shit wasn't going your way with Ike, and you weren't allowed to do what you wanted to do or use characters that you wanted to use, Iger went to bat for you. Iger fought for you, and in essence, benched Ike so that you could take over and do what you wanted to do. And I feel like that's the move that you should have made. I get it. Look, I get it. Feige recently came out and all but said, he hinted, he didn't directly say it, but he hinted and all but said he wants Bergman's job. He wants to eventually be the guy that's in charge of all the studios. So he doesn't want to piss Alan off. He doesn't want to piss that group off. I get that. But you also got to defend your people. You're in a position to take over Alan's job if he decides to walk away because of the success you've seen. And that success is because of your team and people like Victoria. So to not go to bat for her, I think was a mistake, especially since people in the company have gone to bat for him to help him get where he was. I just think it would have been the right move for him to do.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably a good point. He probably didn't because it would jeopardize his future with the company.
Right, and you don't want to get fired when you know you're potentially going there.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. It's like you've made. I understand that, and we both understand that. You know, you gotta play the game. You gotta do what you gotta do, but at the same time, you didn't get to where you're at right now without making ballsy decisions. So he has to do what he feels is right. And I honestly think he just dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah.
But that's it right there, man. I mean, it's a very interesting situation. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it continues moving forward and how Phase 5 will continue to be reacted to. Because so far, I'm loving it. So I have no problems with it, but I feel like maybe we're in the part right now where it's not superhero fatigue. They're just expecting superhero perfection. And you're not going to get that every single time. Not every Marvel project is going to be Infinity War Endgame level. You have to lower your expectations a little bit and just have fun with the movies. That's what they're for. They're not supposed to dissect every single little tiny part. But that rant over. There it is.
Yeah. And Iger, if you guys have been listening the past couple of weeks, just one last thing on this. Iger is slowing the shit down. He came right in and said, let's slow this shit down. We don't need boom, 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 boom. So it's back into the proper hands. You know, he's not going to kill it.
For sure. And fans' expectations, again, slow down.
Yeah, agreed.
That's my biggest thing.